Hello, everybody! If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. We're back at home, back from Adepticon, ready to rock and roll. Joining me, as always, is my one and only co-host, ignore last week. Tom forgot to mute his thing again. It's Tom.
Hey, I'm back. Hello, friends.
You screwed it up during the live show and you had it on your phone. You screwed it up at home. It's fine. It's what I would expect.
It's fine.
It's just Tom also joining us for the first time, and I couldn't be more happy to have him on the show. Simon, what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Hey, thanks very much for having me on. It's going pretty great. I'm really excited to be on the show.
I am excited to have you. I knew I wanted to have Simon on the show. I told him this right before, so I'll just repeat myself. From the moment that I saw he went 4-1 with a Slaves to Darkness list recently, and most lists, when I read them, I know how they tick. Like, I know enough about... This is part of a thing I do for a pseudo living. I pay attention to AOS. You know, I look at lists, I'm like, okay, I get how that's going to play. I know what their path to victory is. I read this list and I was like, I got nothing. I got nothing with this. I don't know how this list is winning. I certainly don't know how it went 4-1. And I was like, I reached out, I was like, Tyler, get Simon on the show. We got to do this immediately. I need to know. I had guesses, but I had no idea. Okay. So, at any rate, we're going to be talking Slaves to Darkness tonight. And we're going to be talking about, you know, what up with them? Why is this faction not winning more? It seems like it should win all the time, and yet it doesn't. Nor are a lot of people playing it, which is also weird, but we'll get into it. So, first off, some news.
Yeah, so let's start with the Adepticon preview. I mean, we did a preview show on this, but I feel like we need to at least acknowledge some of what went up this weekend. Most importantly amongst that list is Ghost Pirates.
They are not pirates. It is a guy in a boat.
Boatmen. But we've had
accept...
Launchian, the Soul Seeker, so like I feel like we already have a
pirate either. You don't get in a dinghy and become a pirate. He's a ghost captain. I'll accept that. That is a true statement. That's correct, Tristan.
But I was right. All
right.
Here's the rumor engine long pointed.
Sure.
To the
Yeah. Look, you want our opinions on it, you can go back and watch last week's show. What I want to know is, Simon, how did you feel overall about the Adepticon previews?
I think they're pretty good. Like, it's hard not to love Ghost Pirates, right? It's hard not, even if they're up for debate, it's hard not to love that kind of thing. And you've got like the other Nighthaunt stuff they revealed around the same time and all that kind of stuff. I think they're looking like really interesting. Like, I don't know exactly. It'll depend on how much some of the stuff like seems like it's going to cost, but that might be quite cool. The Heresy stuff was also amazing. That looks really cool. That might actually be the game that I never realized I wanted to play for a long time.
Okay. Well, the Heresy thing was cool. I really liked the new 40k Chaos Knights. My overall statement is, show us the summer books, you cowards. That's what I wanted to see. That's what we all want to know. Show us. Prove me right that it's Skaven. That's what I want. We all know it is. We all know you're hiding rats up in there. Show us the Skaven. This has been months of me dealing with 4 books I honestly don't care about. Okay? And now, but that's okay. Because I believe that at the end of this road, the Horned Rat has a reward for me. And that's what I want to see. So, show us the Skaven. Okay. Cool. What else we got, Tom? Let's keep going. What else is in the news? Tom,
I'm sorry,
I'm
having some issues.
Yes. You're right.
I'm having technical.
Yeah, your internet's not great right now. And you're not wearing headphones. Just terrible everywhere. while Tom works on his technical issues, I'll go ahead and pick up with some of the news here, because there's a lot going on. So let's Tom, you work on yourself. Maybe it was you who's downloading some things, huh? How about that? Trying to come after me before the show. All right. So here we go. Arena Shades up on pre-order this weekend. I've got that picture over here on the side. This is obviously the herald of the new Nighthaunt and Doc books that'll be coming. Who knows how much time we'll have in between those two. Next question, Simon. Are you excited for new Doc and new Nighthaunt? Either of these armies, your armies, either of these things interest you in any way?
Both makes nearly interested me, but
okay,
because they're quite cool. But I think the main thing I'm surprised about is like how it's like it's like really quick in a row updates for Daughters of Cain.
Yeah,
and I'm really curious as to like what's driving that idea. Like, do they think the current book like doesn't work, and so they're like, oh dear, we need to push out like a new Daughters of Cain book, because we did not want that army to just be snakes and flying snakes. We wanted like people to play, proper units. Like, is it that, or is it just like, hey, I had some cool ideas for what else we could do with Daughters of Cain, like, or is it that they've got loads of the old-fashioned mechanics, like old-fashioned, like the stuff that's dropping out of the 3.0 books, like rerolls and that kind of thing.
Right.
Daughters of Cain have loads of those, so maybe it's a combination of those things. Nighthaunt, I think, they probably need some help more than Daughters of Cain. So I think I'm very happy for Nighthaunt players, because if you've been playing like Nighthaunt nonstop and you've not been running like 14 units of 2 chain gas or some of the weird things you saw on TTS, like if you've been playing proper Nighthaunt for like a long time, and like now is going to be your time, I just hope that like it works out with all your wildest ghostly dreams.
We all do.
That's really cool.
We all do. I agree with everything you just said, Simon. My hope is that maybe we get a more balanced take. The first time it was all witches and sisters. This time, the second time it was all snakes. Maybe the third time's a charm, and we get something. We get like a good. They've seemed to been showing pretty well on internal balance. Like we can talk about external balance challenges in the book, but other than Stormcast, where they've got some units that are kind of out of whack and distorting things, for the most part, the internal balance has been pretty solid in all the books. Especially like you look at Nurgle, IDK, Fire Slayers. Those are great examples of good solid internal balance. So my biggest advice to everybody with the Arena of Shades is probably don't care too much about whatever rules happen to be in this box. This is why I wish they would just release the book closer to the box. But I understand global shipping is terrible right now, so it is what it is. I'm not gonna fault them for it. But because it's gonna look half finished, people are gonna be underwhelmed. Same thing happened with Fire Slayers. Everybody was like, oh, the world is over. Everything is destroyed. All that I love has come crashing down. Well, that is to say the 4 Fire Slayers players in the world said that. But, then the book came out and it was like, oh, never mind. Okay. It's fine. We're good. Right? So
what do you think about the new Fire Slayers? Oh, sorry.
No, what do I think about it? It's good. Like, it's not broken. It's right where books should be. It felt like it's got play, it's got options, it's got multiple different sort of consistencies and paths to victory. It's how books should be written. And I hate Fire Slayers. Like, as an army, I despise it. I think it's just an awful army. But I read the book and I was like, I'm kind of interested in this. I'm still never going to collect it, but this is an absolute win. If you can make me not hate Fire Slayers, you've written a good book.
They're fine. Yeah. Simon, that's my take. They're fine.
Yeah. I think so. Like, they're fine. I don't think it's an army that you're going to like see it in a pairing and be like, oh, Jesus, I'm going to play Fire Slayers. But I don't think it's when you can be like, oh, that's fine, I'm just playing Fire Slayers. It's like, they've got like, they can do mortals. Like, Magma Drafts seem really solid. Like, we'll get to this when we talk about my armies, but my first instinct is probably like, hit the unit many times the same one if you think it's probably good. And Magma Drafts feel like you could just play like, the meme list they posted was like 6 of those.
Right.
It's probably a legitimate army with like 5 Magma Drafts, I think.
Right.
Like, they seem pretty effective at the things that they're trying to do. But Hearthguard Berserkers make me a bit sad, like 160 points. Like, they've got a case of like, we used to be good, and so we're going to be expensive forever. Like the Slanesh stuff, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I agree with you, Simon. Vince does not.
So yeah, we'll move on. But yeah, so my answer is I hope we get something like here's my honest answer to you, Simon. I want more books to feel like Nurgle and Fire Slayers. okay, where you feel like there's interesting things you can play with, but you don't look at it and go, well, this is kind of bent, isn't it? Or you immediately find some bent thing in there. Like, I just don't understand why we celebrate so hard when a book comes out. It's like, oh my God, it's so powerful, it's so broken. I'm like, that's going to be terrible in a month. We're all going to be pissed. Why are we happy about this? It's a bad thing. I want power level just pitching in the middle of the road with multiple interesting builds. That's what all I want. Where it relies on the player skill to guide to victory. I don't... And by the way, Slaves to Darkness was my previous winner for Best Designed Book for this exact reason. Just want to say that. Tie this all together. Okay. Let's keep going with the news. Because we gotta move, son. We got stuff to do here.
Golden Demon Golden Demon, how about those winners?
Yeah, like, well, I wanted to... I'm just going to share a few pieces here that are some of my favorites from the event.
Yep.
Which is, first off, this awesome piece from Sam Lenz. This thing's incredible. I've seen this up close and in person many times. And, like, this thing is truly ridiculous. It's as ridiculous as you think it is. It's even better in your hand. Those are all little nurglings under there that palanquin is on, that he's lovingly rendered each little nurgling. And yeah, it's just amazing. That banner is obviously all freehand. Sam's a master of everything. This is just like such a incredible piece. So, well done, Sam. Well earned. This diorama from Mamikon, like who I had the pleasure of meeting for the first time here. This is incredible. Like, by the way, there's so much detail in this as you get close up to it. This diorama was just mind-blowing for this battle scene. It was so big, and there's so much stuff going on that when you like, it is truly like a whole novel in miniature form as you look around and see all the little things hidden around in here. And Tom, he's using you probably can't see him. You would have had to be there in person to really see him. But he's using the familiars from Silver Tower as like extra little demons and sort of commanders and things that are happening in there. Like the little Lord of Change guys kind of plotting next to the Sorcerer Lord who's in charge, and the book guy is running around and stuff like that. So it's just gorgeous and wonderful, and I love it.
Delightful.
Yep. This was from Kata, who I also met, and who is a lovely, amazing person and incredible artist. Obviously, and obviously, like, she goes by Kaha online, and she's just, I mean, like, next level as far as her style. She's the only person who paints like her in the entire world, and her stuff is next level gorgeous. This took silver in single miniature, and then of course, the absolute winner from Gavin Garza, who this is maybe one of the most perfectly rendered sort of miniatures we've ever seen in a competition. A lot of people ask the question, of how this thing won. I mean, it is absolutely perfect, and don't think that Gavin didn't spend, probably 200 hours on this thing on a skink, because I'm pretty sure that might be an underestimation what I just said. So yeah, I mean, it won it by earning it through just incredible, almost perfect computer level rendering. Perfection. Yeah, it is what it is. So the age of Skinkmar is upon us. He got it's Warhammer Skinkle miniature category, and he won the Skinkle sword. So I'm excited for him. I think it blew people away and started a lot of conversation. But it won by being stupidly good. It's pretty much that easy. Like, it's not a lot more to it, I think. So, good stuff. It was a great competition. I was, of course, sad that, didn't bring home any hardware from this one, but that's okay. We pick ourselves up and we continue on. So, look forward to it.
You had like commended and stuff though, right?
Yeah, I did have a bunch of pieces that made it into the commended entries, which is now the new like final. So there's like finalist pins you get, and then there's commended entry, which is like the level above that. Then they pull the 3 winners out of the commended entries. And yes, I had multiple commended entries, but that's okay. Such is life. There are always more competitions. In anything you lose, in anything, Warhammer tournaments, painting competitions, anything like that, let me let you know a secret. You lose more than you win. Right? Like, depending on how you define victory. And if victory is bringing home hardware or whatever, you lose more than you win in almost everything, right? So. Okay.
So let's talk about the non-functioning AOS app.
Well, yeah, so what's going on with that? It's back now, as far as I understand. There's another update that was out, and you can now read the War Scrolls again. My guess is something got screwed up and it got accidentally locked, because clearly you could still go to other places and still read the War Scrolls. So, I mean, somebody hit the wrong button in code somewhere or commented out a line that should have been commented out. Like, things like that happen. And as far as I know, it's fixed now. So, and even when it wasn't, you could still access the scrolls to other places. But yeah, as far as I know, it's fine now. So,
do not like. That's what I'm going to say. Like, I hope that does not become normal.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you can see them again now, so I assume it's not the norm. They would be foolish to lock the War Scrolls, and they know that. It just felt like it was a total accident. So, there you go. But hey, cool. Accidents happen.
Well, a couple news that's not related, but I'm going to make it related. Slaanesh Hedonites are getting an update in White Dwarf, which apparently is just what they need, because I think they went 5-0 this weekend, over across the pond. So, I mean, is Slaanesh going to be fixed?
Yeah, it's all fixed now. It's done. We're good. Here's what I'll say. They have a stupid terrain piece you could give good rules to, right? So that's it. Just give us, like, maybe you could just copy paste the Herdstone rules right onto the pizza cutter, and I'd be fine with it. Great. Jobs are good. We're done.
I mean, that checks out.
Simon, what are you hoping for in the Slaanesh article? What fixes Slaanesh? Other than, like, an article that says reduce... Here's the new summoning table, double all points cost. Here's the new points for the army, reduce it by half. Go.
Yeah, like, if you can't do points, like, if the terrain piece was, if you're thinking like similarly to the Herdstone, if you said that, well, the terrain piece is going to be board wide, maybe the locus is on a 2+ for all the levels of heroes board wide, or you got +2 to it. So on the greater demons, it was like guarantees. Maybe that like starts to help a bit, because you're not like, I have my super fragile army that makes you fight last, and I didn't roll it, and now I'm dead. Like, maybe that would help them a little bit. And just like a way to be a bit tougher, because they're not, I think as armies go, they're supposed to be very fast, and there's some fast things in there, but there's not like loads of really fast things in that army.
No, it's actually quite
especially compared to the
moderate by current standards.
Yes, but you get to stuff like the real stuff that's nearly there, and you're like, okay, well, you've got like double moving stuffing living city, you've got like double moving dragons, with like loads of teleport and charge stuff, and then you've got like, oh, we can bring marauders on from a board edge, and yeah, okay, like, so either a bit tougher or like somehow faster would be quite helpful, I think, for that army.
Yep.
If you can't just slash the points.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they are the speed kills army, right? Like, that should be their premise. I don't mind them being glass cannons if they're just like the fastest thing in the universe. And by the way, the game is already really fast. It's almost hard to picture something being faster than what current fast is now, when you have 36-inch moving maw crushes in the world, right? Like, I don't know what speed even means anymore, but I know 14-inch walking movement doesn't qualify you as fast anymore. It qualifies you as like good. That's it.
Yeah.
The entire IDK army is just doing doughies around you and just laughing, right? So it is what it is. Yeah, Tome Celestial. I mean, it was inevitable. I won't lie, I was like kind of holding out a little bit of hope that we would get the doc treatment, and they would just be like, nah. Forget about that book. Here's another one on the back of that, right? Just throw that one in the trash where it belongs. Here's a new book. But sadly, no. Tome Celestial it is. Okay. It's all right. Now I've moved my goalpost. Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Now I just want the Beast of Chaos one. Exactly. We all want the Beast of Chaos one.
Or do you get Khorne? Or do you get the Khorne update? Like, we'll see. We'll see next month.
No, I mean, like, so I was tinkering around with a Slaanesh list, and I don't hate it.
You would if you played it.
I hear that. I do. But again, like, I ran Dreadside Harridans this weekend. Come on, dude. Like, They are more expensive and less killy than Daemonettes. So it's fine.
And look at how it catapulted you to the heights of 3, 1, and 1. Yes, absolutely.
Hey. Oh.
All right. At any rate, anything else in the news?
Yes. Yeah, so Adepticon obviously was this last weekend. The finals were announced, kind of went live, when everything was announced on Sunday, and then a hiccup, there's a retraction, and now there's a controversy.
Yeah. I mean, I'll if you don't mind, I'd like to take the address on this. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I didn't participate in the event. I helped them out. I do the final paint judging for the event. Shout out to all the amazing armies that were there. Hobby's a big part of the event, and I love to see it because it meant I had 18 incredible armies to review. And, seriously, they were just exceptionally well done. The top 2 armies, top 3 actually, were just 3 of the best armies I've ever seen. Ever. Anywhere. And so, shout out to all those folks. As far as the controversy with the standings, there is one thing to say. It totally sucks. And one of the people who was working on the scoring came out today and directly apologized for it and took responsibility for it, which is an amazing act of sort of bravery, as it were, and also just being a good stand-up person. They didn't have to do that. They know what the internet's like. They made an error. They admitted that. They are a human being. That Adepticon is a very long, very busy, very intense 5-day affair, and this is being all done at the end of the 5th day. And when using the software, they sorted the wrong way. It happens. It totally sucks. I do hope that what will happen here is GW will extend a second invitation to Emma, to who was thought to be the winner. I don't know anything about that, but I do. That would be a great way to make it all better. Well, better is the wrong word, but that would be a good step in the right direction. That's the appropriate thing to say.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. Even making it second out of 200-person event, not too shabby.
It's incredible, but to go from thinking you were best overall and you had the ticket to the finals to not, it's just an incredible kick.
I agree with that completely. Yeah, I agree with that completely. I played Emma in round 4. She gave a great game. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying to GW, number 2, not so bad for 2-person event. It's worth an invitation. That's all I'm saying.
Agreed, completely. So I hope GW does the right thing. Extends her the same invite they were going to give to first place. It's unfortunate, but come on. This is a rounding error in the truest sense of the word on your overall budget, and it goes a long way toward making things better in the community and trying to make things a little right for a mistake that's made, that we will all make. I only hope that we all have the grace to accept the flaws in our fellow humans as we go through life, because we will all be in a position where one day we're asking for forgiveness from somebody else for a mistake we've made. And it might not be as public as this one, but it could be bigger, it could be smaller. So that's all. Yeah. So there we go. So that's it. There we go. That's what I'll say about that. And I'm sure they'll be back next year and run a great tournament. And I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun for everybody involved. I only heard positive things from the people who were involved this weekend. Seemed like everybody was having a lot of great games. So, good stuff. Okay. Good. That's the news. Ending on a down note, but that's all right. Hopefully Emma gets taken care of. All right. Let's talk about pick of the week. Simon, you're the guest. You get to go first. What would you like to recommend to everybody?
So, thank you. My pick of the week comes from the man himself, Owen Jackson. He suggested this one to me. And
Owen Jackson.
If the Owen Jackson recommends something to you, that is really a recommendation you should take seriously. And so I'm passing it on to the good viewers of Warhammer Weekly. And it is Stuart Irongutsman's McCarran. new series, When the Dust Settles. He's doing videos where he looks back like a couple of months after the book comes out, and he goes, okay, so this is not like hot takes and like, oh, I've read the book and I think this unit is good on rate. It's like, I've read the book, I've gone away 2 or 3 months, played some games, loads of people have played games, and this is like some serious considered analysis of like all the different things in the book. And I have to say, like, for someone who doesn't watch like a huge amount of like content, because there's like so much, and like on release weekend, there's like man reads book, okay, you get that, and then it's like, okay, well now man has read book, and I can see the book man has read, I want to read the book, and then it's like coming back to it after a couple of months and be like, okay, well, I don't play Magickin of Nurgle, but I do want to know how it's been going in the game, and it's really, really good content. So I definitely recommend. Big shout out to Stuart for that.
Fantastic.
And
yeah,
Owen.
I love this idea. This is a lot what we're trying to do right now with this, right? When we come back and revisit armies. So I'm all about this because you can sort of armchair worry it all you want when the book comes out, but you have to see things in play and how they feel. So yeah, linked already in the description. I mean, Stuart's awesome, bottom line. So he's been on the show. He's a great dude, and I'm all about it. Tom, what's your pick?
Obviously, we did a like live show last week. That was a big deal, in reaction to kind of the Adepticon preview. But I want to give a shout out to AOS Coach, who did a live reaction show of his own where he had like their stream up as he's like interacting with it. And it was just simply delightful. Like, I loved it. Like, Coach did a wonderful job. I love the format of like, I'm a sucker for a good reaction video, right? Sure. And Coach he delivered. So I would encourage people to check it out.
Okay, very good. Awesome. My pick of the week is very simple, and it has to do with this little skink fellow right here. Gavin was interviewed by Andy from Call to Paint. They put together a little video. It's only like a 6-minute interview, but it's very nice. He talks about painting the piece and what he was going for and things like that. So go and check out that interview. It's linked in the description. Gavin, I did not get a chance to talk to him at all. He seems like the nicest guy in the world, and obviously he's a great artist. So go check out that interview with him. I would love to have him on the channel sometimes, honestly, and have a talk about sort of what it takes for pieces like this, because I think it's really good, and I'd love to hear what makes him sort of what was going through his head as he kept working on this, like the endurance that it must take, right? Because this is for real. I want everybody to imagine working on something that's like an inch tall for 200 hours of your life. That takes a mental fortitude. Right, this dude's made of steel. Is all I'm saying. He's tougher than me. Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about a little hobby time. So, Simon, what are you working on, man? What's on your desk? What have you been painting? What have you been putting together?
So, until recently, I was planning to dip my toe back into a 40k event. But we just haven't been able to kind of, so I used to play 40k like a lot a few years ago, and then I kind of switched to AOS a lot. And I was like, oh, maybe I love Tyranids. I was like, maybe a new Tyranid book, and like flyers are cool, and so I've been working on like loads of different flying Tyranids, so like Hive Tyrants, Harpies, Crones, that kind of thing. So yeah, they've been painted like in a kind of like electric blue, like kind of glowing blue bodies, and then like kind of a wine red kind of like carapace. I'm going for. It's coming out quite nicely, but nice. I was on the verge of like, well, do I just switch to speed painting mode to try and finish these, or do I just be like, well, you know what, maybe I won't go to this tournament, but I'll actually paint them nicely. And for one of the first times in my Warhammer career, I was like, you know what, I'm not just going to speed paint for the event. I'll just paint them nicely. So I was very pleased with myself.
Nice. All right, Tom, what have you been working on, buddy?
Obviously, I went to Adepticon this weekend, so I've literally been playing Warhammer for 4 days straight, for 4 full days. Played Night Haunt in the current meta for 4 days with the old book, and it was delightful. I enjoyed my games. Somebody asked about how I went or what a rundown was. I went 3-1-1. My loss was to Emma, who had been announced as first. Just kind of showed. Yeah, it was good. It was good. I was happy with my list. I don't. What it is not going to be able to survive into the new book. I know that for a fact because all the rerolls are gone. We've seen that from the War Scrolls, which is really unfortunate. But it's funny. Like I watched a number of people. Basically take the approach I did, and a lot of them did very well. For me, my list was kind of, as Vince dubbed it, bullshit go, where it's just a bunch of like high efficiency body.
Yes.
Say what?
You need the word random on the front of that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Random bullshit go. There you go. Where it's just a bunch of high efficiency bodies out there and just doing what they do, and it having no centralized like nervous system to take down. And so, like for example, game 1, I won against 60 Sentinels and a Severith list, Lumineth, with my Night Hunt ridiculousness. Game 2 was a Squignos list, which I drew. Long story, it was a great game. We just ran out of time, and it was going to be too close to call, so it got called as a draw for both of us, which is unfortunate, but that's just what happens. Game 3, I had a wonderful game against John Wanger and his Doc. So I played Doc game 3. Game 4 was Emma and her Rot Coven Nurgle, and game 5 was Soulblight Gravelord 60 zombies, just a bunch of bodies. But what I was saying is what the list that actually ended up doing very well at Adepticon. I know at least 2 of them that went 5-0 were just bodies.
Yeah, sure.
So like Tom's list was 3 blocks of 40 zombies, 2 Mortarks, right? And that went 5-0. And then another was a guy that who went 5-0 was an OCR list, which was like 50 or more Mortec, and again just regenerating restorative bodies that wasn't real centralized, right? That the enemy would have to grind through. So the meta is shifting, is what I would say. It was interesting to see a bunch of people. I know Jake didn't go 5-0, but Jake took a bunch of Beastmen meat. Is basically what his stuff was, right? And so a lot of people, yeah. So anyways, so it went well. Night Hunt went well. I had a blast. A lot of great games. Had a bunch of great team games as well. Yeah, it was good.
The Horde meta approaches, especially depending on what happens with the GHB. We sit on the precipice of #Horde meta's return. Okay,
let me just say this. I'm going to jump in real quick. It breaks my heart with the Horde meta arriving because chain gas we saw from the War Scroll, it looked like they're changing in ways that I'm not happy about, because I love going and jumping in to a block of 60 zombies with 2 chain gas and getting that 2-inch roll. And I was like, hey, I have 22 attacks from these 2 models.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You said your game didn't finish on time?
On which one? No, it did. Against that.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Your game 2, where you're like, weird that calculation might be super slow and inefficient.
Well, that calculation happened in game 5. Thank you very much. That wasn't involved in my game 2 at all. Sure. But what I would say is, but anyways, it went well. For what it's worth, I took best Night Hunt.
Yay!
Again, yeah, all 3 of us. So yeah.
Hey, whatever. You're the best out of 3. Well done, Tom. I wouldn't have probably rated you maybe even number 2 out of 3, but hey, there we are. So, my hobby time is going to be quick. It was working on a lot of stuff that I can't show anybody. So there we go. That's just what it's going to be probably for a little while, unfortunately. Working on something big, and I can't talk to anyone about it. So, okay, cool. With that, let's get into the meat of this here. Ba-boom! Slaves to Darkness 2022 revisited. All right. S2D. I'm gonna trot out my summary, but then Simon, I wanna come over to you for what you feel I missed or your take on it. Okay. So this first thing we gotta say is this is a large faction. It's 47 War Scrolls just straight up in the faction. Obviously, through allies and stuff, it can be, you have other tools you can access, but just in faction, you got 47 war scrolls, and only 15 of them are leaders. So it doesn't have the ratio like something like Stormcast. You actually have quite a lot of units here. With Stormcast, where it's like 73 scrolls, but 39 of them are heroes, right? It's a different ratio. Under strategies, they have really large selection, but they do have limited play in some phases, especially shooting. And they have some of the most powerful leaders in the game, pound for point, whatever you want to say. Archeon, Varangard, Demon Princess, Chaos Sorcerer, Lord Bellicor. This is not the exhaustive list. There's more. Right? Like, their leaders are not just even powerful in melee. Some of them are that. They're powerful in their effect on the table. This army has an incredible amount of synergies and buffs that would make most armies jealous. Like, it's wild, the buffs that you can get, the sort of cross unit buffs that you can get. It has more save stacking than almost any other army in the meta period. There's just so many ways to get bonuses to save. Probably like Stormcast and maybe Sylvaneth are the other two that could claim the same thing. And they have incredibly good chaff options for board control, especially with the recent White Dwarf update, where you have now marked cultists, and those cultists become battle line if they share a mark with your general, as well as the ability to have sort of other interesting units have marks, like the Dark Oath Chieftain and things like that. Okay, so I'm going to pause there for a second. Did I miss anything, Simon, from your perspective on kind of the general strategy high-level view there?
Yeah, so I'd say there's like maybe two or three things that I would just touch on. One is like you talked about, like they have a huge selection of war scrolls, and you touched on like they've got allies. They have a lot of allies.
Yeah.
And you can go in like you can take that 400 points and you've got loads of cheap units in Slaves to Darkness. So you can get a huge number of like allied units in if you want, or a huge range. You can take the list in so many directions with like, I'm going to have all the Azinch spellcasting buffs. I'm going to have all the Khorne melee buffs. I want some really interesting, well, the new Nurgle book is a bit more keyword locked. Before, you can still do some cool stuff there. So I'd say that allies, and they can ally beasts, right? And Beasts of Chaos are still, even without the new buffs on rate, they're still not bad, quite a few of them. Then I'd say the spell lore is also, although it like, the casting is not like as reliable as like your Teclis is and
Sure.
as your kind of like other, like Seraphons, the effects you get from the spell lore are really good. Like, roll a dice for like Whispers of Chaos. Yeah, it's only 12-inch range. Yeah, it's cast on a 7, but you roll it, and if it's cast, that unit's doing nothing until your next hero phase. Like the one where you roll a dice for remodeling the unit on a 6. If they take a mortal wound, then if they take at least one mortal, then that unit can't move until your next hero phase. That's like an incredibly powerful thing. And same for like a Fight Last spell. Full rerolls to hit and wound for a reasonably good hero against like something it wants to kill, like a hero monster. So I think those two things for sure. And then, and maybe we'll come on to it in a bit later, but the sub-factions are, as well as all being quite different, there is like real power in what the sub-faction abilities lay on top of what is already a generous set of allegiance abilities. Like the auras, you know, the generic buffs you get are powerful, and the sub-factions are really ramp some stuff up at like several levels. So I'd say those are like the three things that I would like approach the book and add to the list, because everything you've said on the list is absolutely correct. I would just add like, I mean, there's so many things to watch for as well.
Yeah, 3 really good points. Totally agree with all of that. Like, it really is just shocking, sort of the kind of synergistic play of this book. And your point about the sub-factions is so good, because they really nailed it with this, and I worry what that's going to feel like when we get the new book, where the sub-faction is like one ability or something, unless it takes a different form, which, by the way, it could. Right? There's nothing saying they have to design everything like this now. It could still be, they could still be very different in some fashion. But the four sort of main ones, I guess, and then idolaters being sort of stuck on there, right? They're just so different in the armies that they sort of encourage you to build, the play style, what they're doing. It's really interesting how much it pushes you while still having a lot of flex, Right?
Yeah,
It's not as though because you went into this one sub-faction, suddenly it's all 2,000 points your list is decided. Not at all. What I found is that, like, it means you definitely want to take a few key core units and sort of move those synergies and exploitations, as it were. But man, then the rest of it, you can just sort of slap a whole one of different multiple chassis, as it were, onto that engine and have it go. And that's just a really good balancing act they hit with this book. And it's one of the few like that. So yeah, okay, cool. I have some questions on this main page I want to answer before we get into the stats. I want both Simon, you, and Tom are going to answer this. I'm not going to answer this because I'm just asking the question. So Simon, you're first. Question number 1: does this army have any real hammers as defined by the modern hammer bar that has been set, other than Archeon? Or maybe 6 Varangard in the appropriate build. Knights of the Empty Throne.
Yeah, so I was exactly going to pick, like, because Archeon, like, you can't say a hammer is like 800 points because half your army has to kill stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Varangard,
he's almost has to do enough work, right? He's not outsized hitting for his points. He's hitting like an 800 point model. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, oh, he's gone and he's killed 300 points. It's like, yeah, 2 more turns of that and he'll break even. Like, let's hope. Like, you know,
right.
Great. Like, if I can keep him killing 200 points a turn over the game, I'm fine. Right? Like, it's crazy, really. But so I think 3s of Varangard are still pretty solid. Like, because you like 6 is like super, but when you've got the double activate built in and all that kind of stuff, I think they're fine. I mean, I always like the idea of playing Chaos Knights with Lancers. In my head, I'm like, yes, Rend 2, damage 2, access to rerolls, like out of combat phase +1 to hit, and then in combat phase double fight. I'm like, yes, I can see it. And then I get to the table and I like roll them into something, and then they go, okay, that's dead, and then they all die.
Yep.
And I'm like, and this only cost me like loads of points and loads of buffs, and yeah. So I think they're really
using them in 5s, Simon.
So I've tried like 5s. I've tried like a 10, and it's like 10 knights. It's like, okay, I've pushed them forward and I've stacked a bunch of saves. You know, you can get like Zinchi ones, 3-up rerolling ones, and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to go to the middle, and then I'm going to kind of take a bunch of damage on 3-up rerolling 1 saves. And that's not like a massively tanky profile in the game. And they go, okay, well, I kind of shot or chipped away a bunch of your knights. And you go, okay, well, can I do my thing now with my big expensive unit? So maybe the answer is like 15, just like triple down. But I just don't feel like that's a winning, like...
It's so unwieldy.
Yeah, the heroes are good in Slaves to Darkness. Like Be'lakor does hit pretty hard. Like, it's got a lot of attacks, damage 2, rend 2, a little bit of 3. Like... but again, after that list, you kind of start to run low. But the allies that you can ally in a Boomthirster, right? The Insensate Bloodthirster, if you want like, you know, a thing that's going to like go off and do a lot of damage. So, but yeah, inherently, I think they struggle a little bit for like, I'm going to take a unit from my battle tome and point it at that thing, and it's going to die. I think they really struggle with that kind of thing.
I mean, Corn marked Splintered Fang, though, right?
Oh yeah, well, like that's not like I suppose that's a hammer, right? Like if you play, we can come on to one of the lists of it later. Like I later Splintered Fang are like probably like point for point, and even if you like ruined the ratio and said, okay, they're going to cost double, they outfight like anything in the game massively. They just burr it off. It's like it's really really crazy damage output. So when you get like 4 attacks each with rerolls to hit, and then like they're just fishing. Really yeah, exactly. You're just like, okay, I've rolled like all my attacks, and then I'm going to roll all of them again except these 6s, and you're like, oh, what's happened? Oh, everything's dead. And then I'm going to go again with my.
It's like Sentinels, right?
yeah, that's true. Like, but Sentinels that cost like less than half of what Sentinels cost.
Right. Yeah, I think.
Indeed.
By the way, I didn't say it earlier, but hey, hit like and subscribe and do those things. Don't forget to hit the like button. It helps everybody. So if you like Slaves to Darkness like we do, hit that like button to show how much you like Slaves to Darkness, because it's a super fun army. Yeah, I mean, yeah, damage seems like a problem to me. It really does. Because the current meta is so reliant on doing damage. right? Because of the nature of battle tactics and things like that. You need to feel like you can pick up a unit, pick up a target, fight your way out of something if you get alpha bunkered, and yet they have a challenge in doing that often. And the Chaos Knights are one of the biggest disappointments to me. It's funny you said that. Like, Chaos Knights just should be like Blood Knights. The fact that there's that big of a gulf in between those two, when traditionally in like older editions they were actually very similar types of units, sort of the most dangerous cavalry in the game, like one unit of Chaos Knights in old enough editions that got down your flank would just clear your whole army. And now they're just like, okay, it's some decent damaging ponies on a 4-up save base.
I mean, but it doesn't help that like they're unwieldy to use in larger groups, right? Like you can't use them in more than 5.
No, they have to be 5.
Yeah, they're really difficult.
Yeah, like they have to be 5s. Yeah.
I think they suffer from Varangard existing. So what's the design space? Because like your big badass like knight unit of old, that's Varangard now. Like the ultimate conquerors of the mortal realms that go in and they kill everything, and it's okay. And then Chaos Knights are like between Marauder Horsemen and Varangard, and they're really at the Marauder Horseman end of the scale, and they need to be much closer to the middle of that scale.
Yeah. It almost feels like we need to move it all up, right? Like Varangard need to go up points and up capability because they're supposed to be the Swords of Archeon, and they should be like that kind of frightening.
It should be like a unit of heroes. Yes.
Like they don't feel like that now. I mean, wounds wise they are, but they're actually the same wounds as a unit of Chaos Knights, right? It's both 15 wounds. And then the Chaos Knights need to tick up accordingly in efficacy and in points as well. And that would probably feel better. And that's part of the problem is that right now, when I think of this army, okay, I picture this army in my head. And it's the super metal cover of most of the classic books, which is just like these, ironclad, steelclad, whatever you want to say, warriors and knights and chaos lords with a war shrine like lumbering behind them and all of that stuff. It's like it is the hosts of chaos, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some marauders out front, something like that. That's just not how you build the army right now. It doesn't look anything like that. Okay? Because you look at warriors and you're like, yeah, that's a cool tar pit. How about I just do the same thing with iron golems and it's going to be better and cheaper, right?
Yeah.
This is the problem.
I mean, I hear that. So I've been building Slaanesh, and maybe it's just in Slaanesh, but I actually really like a block of 20 or of 10 Chaos Warriors. Or I'm sorry, not 10, 20. Like 20 for 400. Like that is an immovable. Like no one's clear. Who's clearing that?
So it's like 40. So it's like 40 wounds on a 4-up save, with no
on a 3-up, like
yeah,
on a
like
3-up base. Yeah, sure.
So they fail 1s and 2s, and we're playing a game where people are like, I need to build a list that kills a Mega Gargant in 1 turn.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're on the same save base.
Yeah,
exactly. They're both 4-ups.
Same save.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, okay, well, the output from them, they're a bit unwieldy. Like, okay, they count as 20, and people are used to being like, there is a blob on that objective that counts as a lot of models, and I have to clear it all in one go. But like with Chaos Knights, you don't kill them, and they hit you back a bit, and you're like, oh, was that it? Whereas a Mega Gargant, if it's like alive and it bashes you a bit, you're like, okay, I'm going to take some proper damage. But like Chaos Knights, like maybe just build that +1 save in. Like just they're covered in, like you said, they're covered in so much iron. Like the Stormcast have a 3-up save.
Yeah.
Just Justice for Warriors. Like Justice for Warriors. That would be my thing for the
100%.
Traditional army.
100%.
Like
Knights and Warriors should be on a 3-up save. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Fix the point as you need to. It's just where it should be. I don't like this conditional +1 to save nonsense. They should just be on a 3-up base. They are like I mean, it's wild to me that they're such a poor save by the standards of the game right now, because when I started playing Warhammer, they were the only unit, basically, outside of a few heroes, that were just rolling around on a 1-up save. Like, that was what they were.
No.
They just had a 1+. And, strength obviously modified that, right? Or the particular weapon. But they were just the best save because Chaos Armor was better than everything else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, they're just, I bought the start collecting box instead of Iron Golems.
Right. Right.
Like, which is real shame, because you should buy the start collecting box and have like a really solid, like, because they should do that job. Absolutely, yep. Tom. Like, they should do that thing where you just place them and you go, 10 warriors here. You're going to struggle to kill them. But yeah, a pip of save and then see how we go. But that would immediately, because once you can get to that magic passing on a 2 on the dice, that's like, obviously we all know that's like so helpful.
Yeah, the math just shifts completely. And it just feels like you've got your, what sort of kills me about it is you feels like you got your 2 perfect rolls there. Roll, not dice rolls, rolls, ROLE, right? Yeah. Like Anvil, Hammer, Warriors, Knights. Like, it's, right? I mean, I'm not crazy here. It just feels like that's what they should be.
Yeah.
Okay. Enough of my, yes. 2+, what's up, Doug? Said hashtag fossil talk. Yes, I am an old man. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. I think what we see is, I asked these 2 questions not for us to answer them here. Can their traditional strategy win? Can it, like, by that I mean like a more traditional mixed arms type of build of how we think of like Platonic Warhammer, or is like a more control strategy a path to victory? Okay. So, those aren't to answer now. Those are for us to answer as we look at the lists and go through this. Okay, cool beans. Let's get into some stats. Stats. Ooh yeah. Who loves stats? We all love stats. Okay. All right. Slaves to Darkness stats. As always, all stats are courtesy of Rob, Ziggy, and the T-Sports Stats Center. Link is in the description. If you want to go check out any of these you're on your own, you certainly can. They are awesome. You can see all sorts of stats. I didn't include here, like the army's matchup against other armies, its T-Whip, its first round loss, what it tends to lose to first, all that kind of stuff. Amazing work by Rob, Ziggy, and the whole team. So thank you for all this and for making it publicly available. It's fantastic. All right. Overall win rate, 47%. Pretty middling. They're in the middle zone. Lower middle, but middle. Okay. That's fine. There's a lot of worse off armies. So that's not too bad. I don't feel bad about that. Simon, what's your feeling about that number?
I think you can't reasonably complain about something being between that kind of like that 47-53 like spread. Like,
yeah.
If you're hitting there, like, that's pretty. If you were designing the book and you're like, okay, after a year, 18 months, I want to be hitting that. I want to be hitting a win rate. That's about the level you pick. So, I mean, the only thing that maybe does push them down is that the boxes that you buy when you get into the army, and so a lot of people will play because they're an iconic army, don't contain, as we've talked about, the really kind of juicy stuff from the book.
Right.
So, but I don't hate an army with a 47% win rate. Like, same as if it was like 53, I wouldn't be like, well, these are clearly too strong. So I wouldn't say these are clearly too weak on that basis.
Yeah, if we had the whole meta hitting between 47 and 53 or something like that, we'd be like, oh my god, we are in a golden era of balance in Warhammer, right? So yeah, I feel like they're within acceptable bounds. So this army can win, right? We're not dealing with like when we talked about, like Slaanesh a couple weeks back, and it was like, can this army win? Because they're down at like 38% in the same time period. Woof. Right? And even then, yes, haha, they got a 5-0 in Poland. We all know. And I'm happy for that player, amazing player. But that's the player winning, not Slaanesh in general, right? Like, if I handed that army to the masses, it's not going to go well. Okay. Cool. Very good. Next up, their meta representation, lower than I would expect. And this is something we're going to take some swings at this. Why is this? Like, they're at 2.7% in their meta representation. That's super low.
Well, not only that, like, that's approximately 3%. At Adepticon, there were only 3 of them in 200, which is 1.5. Right. So there was half that actual representation at Adepticon this weekend.
Yep.
Shout out to our friend Dan, who plays with Vince weekly, who took best Slaves to Darkness this weekend. with a not stellar record. Good job, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, they're within striking distance of like
right there.
Legion of the First Prince and Gloomspite. Which
Right.
it's just crazy that those are all kind of in the same area here, or Nighthaunt. Like, this is Slaves to Darkness. This is the manifold hosts of chaos, the ruinous powers. How is this at 2.7%?
I think a lot of people will, and it's the same kind of thing. Like, there are really good intro armies to the game, right? Because the core mechanics of a lot. I mean, there's a lot of complexity there, but it doesn't have to be if you don't want in your army. You can be like, I've got my knights, I've got my warriors, I've got a lord who buffs the fighty stuff, I've got a sorcerer who does spells, I've got a war shrine that prays and protects things. There are a lot of. I think there are very easy. Like, I need to start playing Warhammer, and I would love to start playing Warhammer. I'd love to start playing Age of Sigmar, and I'd play these. And then you go, oh, there's other armies that do all of the particular bit of the game that I love much better, unless I invest loads of effort in the complexity. So I'll just switch to one of the less complex but higher performing at the bit I like. You know, you want like a really efficient combat army. It's like, okay, well, how about you switch to like Big Wow? Or you want like, you know, something that's just like tough blocks of like bodies that advance. You could switch to like Stormcast, although Chaos to Stormcast like narratively, but if what you're interested in is like the mechanics. And then if you play like, if you like, I love Chaos, it's like, well, do you love all of the Chaos Gods the same, or do you want to play one of the faction books?
Yeah,
so
sure.
There's a lot of pull factors away from them in like various different directions, I think.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And yeah, so to clarify, and Ziggy made this point because I think he's in the chat there. This is 3.1 and 3.2 is what I'm including here. So yes, this is since the winter update. Is what these stats are drawn from. Not all of 3.0. Okay. So I think that's a good explanation. I really think you nailed it. It's almost like S2D ends up being this weird beige wallpaper of chaos where oftentimes you're going to be wanting to pull into something a little more I don't know how to say this. Yeah, a little more like with a certain thing about it, right? It's not generic chaos. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You want to you buy it and then you want to redecorate. It's the same kind of feeling, I think.
Sure. No, there you go. It's good. It's good. Absolutely. Boy, that Stormcast faction representation rate is way out of whack. I just can't. This table blows my mind, man. By the way, there are 25 armies in AOS. So if everything were to be completely perfect, you would see a mode right here of like 4%. And that would sort of be where most things would group hopefully more tightly around. Obviously, this does not mode at 4%, just so that's clearly obvious. Okay. Next one. I thought this was really fascinating. I'm gonna go through both of these slides, and then I'll come back to the point, because it's kind of over 2 slides. I had to split it up here. But this is the win rate versus the top tier, middle tier, and bottom tier. Okay? So the armies that are above 55, below 45, and in the middle. That's how you get whether you're in top, middle, or bottom tier. Okay. So their win rate against the top tier is 41%, right on the average line. Right? Because if you see the average, it's 41%. Obviously not a great win rate against the top tier, but they are hitting the middle line. All right. Probably fine. They're in good company here. Right? With a lot of other stuff. Sons, Ironjaws, Beasts, Maggotkin, Disciples, Daughters. All are basically within the margin of error of this number. Right?
Yep.
You look at their win rate versus the middle tier, higher. 49%. They're 3% above the average. Again, remain in a lot of good company. But now let's drop to their win rate against the low tier. The worst armies. Their win rate against the worst armies is 44%. It's 10 points below the average. What is it about like Gits and Beasts and everything else that's been beating up on the Slaves to Darkness? Why is this happening?
Nighthaunt's like, ooh, yeah, here we go.
Yeah, it's like our Nighthaunt cleaning these guys' clocks. Like, what's going on here? I thought this was fascinating. Skaven are just apparently rocking all over their generic chaos brethren.
I think like it's a weird one, but if you look at the armies that are down there, it's like Skaven, okay, well, actually, Storm Fiends just ruin Chaos, right? Because you can't shoot with Chaos. If you play Slayer to Darkness, you don't play shooting. Like, you go, oh, I've got a Soul Grinder. You go, okay,
Right.
cool. These are Storm Fiends. Like, one of you is playing shooting, and one of you is rolling a couple of dice.
Right.
Like, so, and that will, like, annihilate a lot of Chaos stuff. And same, like, Sylvaneth, even, like, Kurnoth Hunters with Bows, Alariel Spear, that's all, like, fine quality shooting that pulls out your buff heroes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of, like, the Slaves to Darkness builds, even the good performing ones, you need buff heroes in them. You need some way of pulling the reasonably fine units you have and, like, juicing them up so they're really effective.
Mm-hmm.
And armies that happen to be able to shoot those off quite straightforwardly, even ones that don't shoot them off very efficiently, if they shoot them off at all, you're in a real problem. Whereas a lot of the middle of the pack stuff is like other stuff that is pretty quick and maybe overruns the lower tier shooting armies and still bumps off the higher tier stuff. But it kind of, okay, we're going to have a big fight. And Chaos is like, oh, a big fight? That's what I can do. And I can do that pretty well. Like, you know, Idolators outfight anything in the game. Like,
Right.
Despoilers can kind of control, or the Corn Prince controls a lot of fights. So I think maybe it's not like those books are bad. Or, you know, and they happen to beat them. It's like those books do a thing that is normally not that great. But Slaves to Darkness have, like, uniquely few options to not be vulnerable to their strategies.
Yeah, the popular sentiment in the comments in the chat seems to be that a lot of those lower tier armies tend to also have hordes and a lot of chaff and stuff like that, and so it's hard for them to punch through. They don't have singular threats that get controlled or taken out by Be'lakor or get, you know, stopped as easily by the Khorne Demon Prince or stuff like that, right? So they just don't. It was Tom's strategy, right? There's nothing to shoot. There's nothing of value in this army. There's nothing for you to control. Everything's crap, and it's all coming over, right? Like, here it is. Deal with it.
Let's start grinding. Yep.
Right. Like, I'm just gonna throw a big pile on you, and you're gonna have to dig your way out of this, and you're gonna hate it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and like you've got like plays, like you've got a lot of things. It's like Mask of Darkness, like a great spell. You know, it's like ward-wide teleport. Okay, yeah, sign me up. I'll have that every single time. But like you're rolling a 7 against an Unbind, you've got like a better 50-50 shot of it coming off.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, half the time you dig yourself out, and the other half you don't, and you lose.
Right.
And that's your shot, which is a bit rubbish.
Right. Nope. Makes total sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I just thought this was such a fascinating stat because the swing around the average was so interesting to me, right? Okay. Unit representation within faction. Now, this is let's have a little talk about units here. I thought this would be a good slide to sort of talk about, you know, what's in the army, what we see, and then what we don't see, and why we don't see it. So you look at this unit representation within faction, and Slaves to Darkness Demon Prince, surprise, surprise, 12.8%. My guess is 12.7% of that is Khorne Demon Princes, and the other 0.1 is the Zeech Demon Prince that was in your list. That's it.
He's pretty good. Reroll ones to save on a 3-up scroll save. Never going to complain. But
Sure.
yeah, I mean, he's like a sideshow to the Khorne Demon Prince, like Palooza, because that, like, Bloodslit Ground is, for me, hands down the best. I mean, the best command ability in the game. Maybe second best is Archaon in Host of the Everchosen.
Sure.
Which, like, it tells you the stuff this army can, and then you see some people play both of those, and you're like, that's like pretty fierce. But Bloodslit Ground, so it's half run and charge rolls to any run or charge move that starts within 18 inches. And that is like a huge amount of board, and especially in the smaller AOS 3 boards. You're looking at, like, you just to make yourself unchargeable and play, and then with redeploy being introduced, and it's like, you move to 3 inches away from my stuff. So on a 3+, you can't charge me, right? Okay, cool. And it's like, oh, like, the amount of times people have failed a battle tactic on that kind of thing. So, I'm just going to move up and charge something, and you're like, no, you're not. It's gone. Sorry. Like,
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about.
A really,
No, I was just going to say, I was going to jump to the next one, which is, because I think we all know the Khorne Demon Prince is just bent sideways good. Like, it's a joke that he's the same points cost as the other 3 Demon Princes. It's the most comical comparison to me.
But he's a prime target now.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's totally worth it. Yeah, I would still take him every time, and who cares? The
You
Chaos
got to make
Sorcerer,
your charges. You got to make your charges in order to remove it.
right? Yeah, exactly. Good luck
Yeah,
lifting
yeah,
him because he's in the middle of like pitch black and unchargeable. So good stuff. You can't shoot him, can't fight him. I don't know what's killing him.
If you get one of those prime mentor points, I'll just shake your hand, like because it's like that's your win. It's like, okay, well, these will never die.
I was a prime hunter this weekend, and I got 0
Yeah, sure.
0 points.
Chaos Sorcerer Lord, is this guy still pound for pound like one of the best just regular foot heroes in the game? Even with his increased points. He went up 20 points at the last point update, and I still think he's incredible.
I mean, so Oracular Visions is great. So is Demonic Power. I think he suffers from like the meta we're in a bit, which is not kind to like 5 or 6 wound foot heroes
Sure.
that don't hide and just go, I'm gonna buff stuff, but please don't kill me. They like really struggle, like, you know, because the Seraphons go, oh well, this Bastladon probably gets rid of that, or these long strikes, or whatever. They all just go, all right, well, he looked difficult, and now he's dead.
Yeah.
So I think the Manticore guy, like, he's much further down the list, but he gives like a bit more. You know, he's still got Oracular Vision. He doesn't have Demonic Power, but you've got lots of ways to get rerolls in this army. And I think he might, in the meta, you might see a bit more of like a bit fewer of the foot sorcerers who can just die, and a few more of the Manticore ones who can survive a bit long. You know, heroic recover, stuff like that, and maybe like keep kicking out the buff. And they've got the brilliant like attack profile as well.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, against other monsters, actually, they're not a good scrap, right? Especially if you do like a Titanic duel with the rerolls. Like, sure, they'll put out some damage.
I have to wonder though if we move away from shooting through a couple different, pressure points that are getting put on shooting, perhaps.
Yeah.
That this guy doesn't just become more and more powerful because again, utility wise, you're absolutely right. He packs one of the best utility spells and one of the best utility abilities anywhere.
Yeah.
Archeon, what can be said about him? Sure. I mean, he shows up a lot. By the way, all these stats, I should say, again, just to repeat for everybody, these are all from Siggy and Rob at the T Sports Center. Link is in the description. Go check out all their amazing work. But also, they're all 3.1 and 3.2. So post the end of December update. Okay.
Right. It's not when Archeon was dominating. This is all post, like, War Scroll change.
Yeah. Varangard, Bellicor, Marauders, Untamed Beasts, the Chaos Lord, the War Shrine, the Knights, Warriors. Cockatrice was a funny one. Boy, he really worked his way up there higher than I thought. The Chaos Sork Lord on Manticore, the Chaos Spawn, the Chaos Lord on Karkadrak, and Chaos Marauder Horseman.
I mean, we're not in a Beastman army, but that Cockatrice can still do some work.
Sure.
Yeah, you can get 4. Is the thing, right? And 4 of those, it's like, okay, well, if you need a way to like reach out and do a bit of damage and like actually play that phase that is between movement and charging, they're quite helpful and they're not very expensive. So I would support that as like a pick, and especially into the game at the moment, it's like, 4 of them just roll into some dragons and do okay, and a dragon disappears. Yeah, that's a good time. Like,
I want to give a shout out to Jonathan Enzer in the comments who said shout out to Sail the Faithless. Pour one out for an OG. Tom and I did not remember that Sail the Faithless existed until Tom and I were on the drive to Adepticon and we're talking about old lists. And he brought up his old list and used Sail the Faithless. And I was like, oh.
It's just like, whoa.
Yeah, like that guy. We just all forgot that guy ever existed. He was in every list.
He came with his own name's Chaos Spawn. Do you remember what his Chaos Spawn name was?
No, I do not.
Nightmare, right?
What was it?
Nightmare.
It was.
Very nice.
I was looking because he's still on the iOS app. Because I'm always like, I'm looking for like, what weird stuff can I put in my chaos list with like a few points? And it's like, oh, is this guy still possible? Because he's great. And it's like, no, he's gone. I was like, oh. So if he's in Legends, take him out of the app. Like, talk about the app earlier. If you're in Legend, don't tease me like this. Like, oh, maybe you can't still play sales. So enough's enough. Just rip the Band-Aid off.
There's just a couple of other items that jump out at me here. You look at how much of this stuff is control/buff, and I think that speaks to your point, right? Yeah. Like the Demon Prince, the Sorcerer Lord, Bellicor. Not that he can't do other things, he certainly can. I would argue the Untamed Beasts fall into this because they're control chaff, right? The Chaos Lord, the War Shrine, right? The Chaos Sork Lord on Manticore. All of these things have some element of like control / utility to them. They buff other things. They control the board space. It's a big part of their game plan overall, right? They're not actually just like a force like they have been at many points in Chaos's history, where it's just like, no, we kill you by being better than you and just pushing forward. This is a lot of their history where they won by just having better stats than everybody else and just walking forward. And that just isn't the way it works now at all.
I think the thing I'm surprised not to see, and maybe it's because the White Dwarf update hasn't like filtered through into people's like hobby purchases, but it's Iron Golems.
Right.
Like, unless I missed it, I had to like double check the list. I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm not seeing Iron Golems. And I think like until you play with them and you realize like, I can spend 225 points on Battle Line, park it in some cover on some objectives, and never worry again. Like, they are really, and if you can make them like Zinch, they're just like obscene. Like, like imagine if the 4%, the nearly 10% of the units that are Knights or Warriors. Imagine if each of those was instead Iron Golems. That 10% gets 100 points cheaper. So basically, everyone's getting like a few extra points in every single list. If you do nothing but switch from the old style units that look cool but do nothing into these weird Warcry guys that somehow are amazing.
They carry a 5-up after save, or like a 5-up ward against mortals, but in general that doesn't justify the cost difference.
Yeah, you're saying the Warriors.
Yeah, the rate. Yeah, and like you're still Bravery 8 on Iron Golems. Like they do like so, and they're just so cheap. You just be like, well, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah,
really
they're ridiculously cheap. And
Dan and our teams ran a 24 block of them.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm very aware of what they can do.
Yeah, you would, right? You would. You'd be like, okay, well, that's only 25 points more expensive than 10 Warriors.
Right. That is a wonderful investment at a 1K list.
Yeah, and they shoot. They have guns. Like, stuff gets close. It's a bunch of shots. Like, you're gonna roll like on Unleash Hell against Morathi. Yeah, I'll roll the dice. Like, I'll chip a wound.
They have hand axes. Like, they're 4s and 4s, 8 inches. And I had to laugh because I watched Dan run up and be like, and roll like 20 attacks. And I was like, I guess they do that, which is as many as they would normally get almost.
Yeah, there's also the little minor trick that you can remove 9 wounds from the unit, but only lose 3 bodies in Iron Golems, which is super relevant because you can just pull if you're talking about a max unit, right? Because you can just pull the ogres, and that kind of ablative wounds while still remaining above the key 20 count, right? You think of what a Mega Gargant tends to count as, which is 20. These guys can lose 9 wounds and still be 21. It's actually just a really nice way the number works out for them. And as you mentioned, all for just dirt cheap, right? I saw somebody mention it earlier, but yeah, a couple units that didn't occur on here that I think are of value. The other one being the I think you mentioned it, and I think I saw it in the chat. I don't remember who mentioned it. It was all over the place. The Mind Stealer Sphere Ranks, man. The Kitty Cat. Kitty Cat is another ace pick. I've been backing the Kitty Cat since the Kitty Cat came out because I think it is super good in everything it does. I think it only got better in 3.0. Yeah, go ahead.
He's good at point investment.
They're really effective. Like, you can make your army essentially like very, very difficult to trade with.
Right.
If you put anything within 12 inches of a cat, it's dead. Because Chaos is great at being like, well, there's a thing there and I can just gang up on it with a whole bunch of stuff that is fine. And it's like, okay, well, so you just put, Sphinx in the middle of your army. This little beautiful, like, bubble. It's a monster. It opens, because you don't have, like, you could take the Sorcerer Lord, it opens up the battle tactic. If you take him and a Sorcerer Lord, it opens up Spearhead and Ferocious Advance and Metamorphosis. So loads of great options. And again, not expensive, like less than 100 points.
Yep.
Like, super choice.
Yep. So yeah, the Kitty Cat is a hot pick for me for sure. What's on the, like you mentioned, the 2 that are on this list that surprised you? Let me ask you a question. Is the Chaos Lord on Karkadrak, is he held back more from appearing by his lack of rend on his main weapon, or by Chaos Knights not being very good? Which one is it? Because if you looked at him in the void, you're like, this dude's a pretty good hero.
I think he costs a little bit more than, and his role in the army totally competes with, in terms of lack of rend and having a few mortals, the Demon Prince.
Yep.
If you've got like 225 to spend, and you haven't got a Demon Prince, that's a Demon Prince every time. Like, that's the serious. Like, if you've got a start collect, like, I would imagine 1.2% of people have bought the start collecting box and decided to use their Karkadrak. And he's nice, a cool model, like, and he hits kind of hard. And even if you've got a Demon Prince, it's like, well, a second one of these is also really good. I mean, I like 4 or 5, right? But a second one is still going to be better off overall than just having another Karkadrak, because they still, they don't take an activation to fight with. They're fast, like they fly, which is really helpful in the game. And it's a backup of that command ability. They shoot one off, and you go, okay, still not charging me.
Well, it just tells me that that if Chaos Knights were cheaper, there would be a decision to make because of what he's bringing to their offense.
Yeah, I think if his command ability was doing something really amazing with Chaos Knights, and if Chaos Knights were good, then you'd be like, okay, he's not. I could see that competition breaking the other way, right? If Chaos Knights were a real hammer and he was like juicing them even more, then you'd want both tools.
I think if he was +1 attack for Knights, you might see him, because in a book with like the Chaos Sorcerer Lord rerolls to hit, the War Shrine rerolls to hit, you've got reroll ones to hit just for playing as Khorne.
Right.
Like a source of +1 to hit. You've got damn terrain on half the time on your side of the board or somewhere near a fight anyway.
Yeah.
+1 to hit is not a particularly spicy buff that you're going to spend 225 points on a guy who, on his weapon that he needs to kill stuff with to heal, has no rend.
Right. Yep. Okay. Any other units that are not here that we think should be here?
Anything else? The Ruthless Vortex Beast was on this list. I wish. That's the one unit that I wish was like. They're not terrible. Right? It's gonna go like the Metalith, like 2 of them in like the pre-game move thing, so they can get into range and start. Because you're putting mortal wounds like a long way down range, and there's no way to get around it. If they're in range, you just roll the 4+ and you take D3 or D6. But they're just not there, and I just have to live with it. But I wish they were there. Maybe the next list is 4 of those, but probably not.
Well, I certainly understand. I have 2 painted Mutalith Vortex Beasts, so I'm a big fan. I understand completely where your heart's at. But yes, you're right. They're goofball, but man, do they just not do it. But yes, they will have their day in the sun.
I love the Dark Oath, both of the heroes, like the aesthetics of them.
Sure.
I just wish they actually saw the table. Obviously in Marauder heavy builds, they can see the table occasionally, but I don't know. To me, I wish Marauders weren't what they are. And we actually got aesthetically, like Marauders, much like closer to the Tire Spirant or the Spire Tyrants.
That's a very funny switch. The Tire Spirants.
I have those as my Marauders. I have those models, and I rebased them onto 25s as my Marauders because they're just so much nicer. It's like I don't want to play with these weird out of date triangle Vikings. I want to play with like the beautiful Warcry sculpts, which are just like sublime. The Dark Oath is like okay in Idolaters, the chieftain for Fight on Death. That's a really if you've got like loads of juiced up, buffed like cheap models, having them fight on death is really helpful. Like it really plays well into like a combat trading meta, which I think we're very nearly at.
Yeah. And actually, I think that's probably we just kind of breezed by this when we did the Fire Slayer talk, but I actually think that that's one of the strongest aspects of a number of the Fire Slayer units that we just never talked about was the trading meta. Like I think that they play well in that space, and obviously, Slaves does that as well.
Yeah. Part of me wishes that a lot of the other there are. I mean, I suppose I'm being greedy, but there are 3. I think, at least 3. Yeah, I'll say 3. I'll stand by that. Valid Warcry warbands that have a home in armies. But there's a lot of Warcry folks. And I kind of wish more of them had a place. I wish they did have some differing role where you could see reasons to take more of them.
I love my Cypher Lords. Like, aesthetically, I love what they look like. I wish they actually had a role.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. There's a bunch of them that are like that, right? Where, like, most of the Chaos Warcry warbands are pretty beautiful models. Yeah. It's just like they don't do anything that's worth anything.
What's your third unit? I'm assuming the first two are Golems and Untamed. What's your third one that you think is like worth it?
Snakes.
Oh, sorry, yeah, of course. Of course, yeah.
No, you're fine.
I think like Cypher Lords, if that was just once per game, make something -1 to hit for 70 points, I'd be like, okay, I'll take that. Like, I'll throw that into like an important combat. Maybe that's not expensive, and they can be battle line. Like, but yeah, you're right. They're just not. There's a lot of them that are not quite there, and then there's a couple that are like really pushed. And it's like, well, if I'm going to buy something Warcry, I'm going to buy these three exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Unfortunate. Okay. Let's see. Next up, win rate versus opposition faction. So this is how often they win against the opposition faction. Okay. So first of all, our discussion of Sylvaneth earlier, they're crushing it over here. Crushing the Sylvaneth. Win rate versus, yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I had it right, like that I'm looking at this the right way around. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny because I'm trying to figure out where the low tier is that was bringing them down. Because against a lot of them, like, you know, the earlier jokes I mentioned, and, you know, like Flesh Eaters, they do well into Gloomspite, Hedonites, Sylvaneth. Those are all low tier. The low tier is quite big, by the way. They're doing fairly well there. But like Cruel Boys, low. You know, Skaven, 50-50. Okay, fair enough.
Seraphon and Skaven is the same win rate. Like, what kind of battle tome is this? Where you beat Skaven as often as you beat Seraphon? Like, that's really wild. Like you're like, everyone's like, Skaven, they're just trash, right? And Seraphon are amazing. Like, paraphrasing, like, there's more complexity, but broadly. And then you're like, the Slaves of Darkness, you're like, both of those are a coin flip for me. Like, that's a weird headspace for a battle tome. But it speaks to the design, I think, where it can go so many ways.
Right.
4 Hedonites.
That's they're used to it. Yeah, I mean, when you look at this, obviously the armies they have challenges against that stand way out are like Daughters, Tzeentch, right? Somehow Cruel Boys, Lumineth. I guess Cruel Boys just got these guys' numbers. Not a lot of fights under there. There hasn't been a ton of those matchups.
Will just ruin Slaves. Like, you go, oh,
right,
nice looking buff heroes. Shame if they all took 6 mortal wounds.
Blap.
That's the end of that game.
Right. Yeah, indeed. And it does very much break down, as you said earlier, right, to a point of like, who wants to have a fair punch up in the middle or something like that versus who's going to just sit there and be like, that's a problem, that's dead.
Right, okay, which obviously, cool. Like,
now that I've
Daughters,
your army,
Tzeentch, Cruel Boys, Lumineth are all just going to lift all their 5 wound heroes.
Right.
Yeah. What's going on with Big Wog?
So few people. It's always hard with Big Wog. There's just keep in mind that's such a small meta representation. Like there is a really small amount of games under there, so that stat is not statistically reliable because it's just that's probably 8 games or something out of the thousands that have been played.
Well, sure, and Big Wog is probably running a bunch of Cruel Boy crossbow guys anyways, so like that's probably mixed in with Iron Jaws, right? And so that's probably like they're probably lifting all the same support heroes as well.
Yeah. The problem with Big Wog is there's such a small meta representation, and there's a few like really good players who play them that they get this weird math thing that just kind of throws everything off. All right, lists. Let's talk lists, folks. Okay, now we get to the fun part. I want to talk about the lists. These lists are from Simon, and one of them is from somebody else that Simon passed along to me. We will credit them when we get there. But I like both of these lists. I I did not delete any of your names of the leaders, but I did delete all your names from the actual Iron Golems because you had named everybody in the Iron Golem unit, and I had to fit this onto one page somehow.
The exact same happened at the tournament I went to.
Amazing.
Justice for the individual. They're just as important as everyone else.
Sure.
In that list, definitely.
Yeah, I just want to point out to everyone, Simon is a hero. When I got this, every one of these battle line Iron Golems, there was literally a list going down of all of the individual Iron Golems named. 24 individual uniquely named guys based on who they were, their role and stuff, right? So it was like yeah, absolutely. Like that is he's into it. You Simon, you're both a great narrative and competitive player. You're bringing the narrative here. Okay. So this is the list that I originally saw, and it blew my mind because I couldn't figure out what you were doing to win with this list against who you were beating. As I said before the show, you've got the worst Mega Gargant. You've got Be'lakor, who's good. You've got a lot of Demon Princes, just like maybe too many. There's a lot of Demon Princes. And then you've got just 24 idiots who showed up to this fight. And then a couple endless spells. Take us through this, man.
Okay, so to start with, like, I mean, before we get into the tech, because there's layers and layers of tech, right? But the units and the actual stuff there, they are all, and I can talk about One-Eyed Grunnock and why I think he's kind of fine, but they are all really good on rate. Each of those units, like Iron Golems, in my opinion, the best battle line you get in Slaves of Darkness, especially if you don't want them to do anything. If you're just like, I need to fight and kill, and none of my battle line really do that without loads of extra investment that can be shot off, so they're fine. Khorne Demon Princes fight really well on the charge. It's got 2s and 3s depending on the weapon, rerolling 1s to hit, 2s to wound on everything, and they got a mortal wound spike as well on the 6 to hit. Be'lakor is obviously great, and then the One-Eyed Grunnock, he's a weird one because he's a monster, which gives you more play with the monstrous rampages with raw, which is really helpful when you don't have too much rend. He almost always effectively fights on top profile because it's very easy for him to get to his maximum number of attacks, regardless of how much damage he's taken. Sure. So that's very helpful. And then it's very difficult for people to engage him when I don't want him to fight them. So then that leads nicely into like the tech in the list. So I've got like a spell enhancement. I've got an extra artifact for the Arcane Tome. I've got 2 Warlord battalions for extra CPs and enhancements. And so the idea is that like you have the Demon Princes, and then you play in Despoilers, which means in your hero phase on a 4+ they heal, and you can do that after you miscast. So you can time it so that you cast your spell, and then if you miscast, you then roll the heal near the end of the phase. And you've got Life Swarm for kind of more healing that combos nicely with that. You've also got Pitch Black Terrain from being Despoilers. So whenever you move any kind of move, you turn every terrain feature within 6 inches of a Demon Prince that moves into 1-inch lost block. So if it goes through more than 1 inch of it, then they can't see through it. And there's no, if you fly, you can shoot through it, or anything. There's no exemptions. You just can't see. And that's really helpful in the game at the moment. And that combos really nicely with the endless spells because you need line of sight to dispel them. So you can't, once I get the Life Swarm down, you can't get rid of it unless you're Seraphon because you can't ever see it to dispel it because I'll just put it in instant terrain. And similarly for the Palisade, because the pitch black wording is closest point to closest point, I can kind of angle the Palisade and basically make a piece of pitch black terrain bigger and like extend off the side with the Palisade, which is really quite fun. That's quite, if you've only got a small piece in your deployment zone, that's really helpful. And then the command trait for the pre-game move means even if you're going second, D3 units move 5 inches. So you can use a Demon Prince with that to trigger the pitch black terrain, where you've basically clustered all of your Demon Princes in a ball behind the one piece that they can be in and not die. So you've kind of got like this, and then obviously got the Khorne Demon Princes for the defensive, halving charges tech. So you've got something that's quite hard to dig out if it doesn't engage you. Like, all the Demon Princes are on 3-up armor saves on the scrolls, so can easily get to 2-ups on the dice, which, as we know, is very effective. The Tzeentch guy is a little bit tougher again because he's got those reroll 1s, So he's quite a nice pin piece. You can put Mystic Shield, Finest Hour, and All Out Defense on him, and he's going to be really difficult for a lot of stuff to remove. They all get cover as well. So then you've got how does it play the game, which I think was your main challenge. Fair enough. So you look at the shape of a lot of armies, and the Doombringer Blade is really good into the shape of a lot of lists. Yep. So this is the Despoilers artifact. You pick one hero or monster in their list, your whole army, all the Despoiler stuff, so not the Mega Gargant, but everything else, even the Golems, we will all hit some wounds against it all game, just for free. You just do that. So if you've got the classic with the 4 dragons in a unit, it's really, really useful. They push those dragons towards you. You then gang up on them with kind of all your units fighting.
Yeah.
That leads nicely into the second point about the combat, which is a Demon Prince on his own, he's just fine damage. He's got 4 attacks, 4s, 3s, -1 D3, 6s to hit, do 2 mortals instead, and the Khorne ones get reroll 1s to hit and +1 to wound, and they all get +1 to hit on the charge. But I don't fight with 1. I fight with 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I pick my first activation.
Right.
Which is a giant.
Which is a giant or Bellicor, depending on what I need and where it kind of is. So you're normally fighting with 1,500 points, more or less, before they get an activation. So actually, you're kind of by the back door playing activation wars. You're saying, well, I'm not interested. I mean, the next list is also kind of similar. It's you know what? I'm just going to push 4 Demon Princes into you. They're on 60 mil bases, which is really nice because it means if somebody engages one and there's another one touching it, they engage that one too, and then both of them fight you. So even if you do make that charge from 3 inches away where you need a 6, if there's a Demon Prince buddying up with another Demon Prince, both of those get to fight you before you get to fight them. And that will take quite a lot off most things. So that's really helpful as well. So then you end up playing you can't really get to me with shooting before I rush you. And if there's a big open stretch of ground where it's there's a long way between me and those long strikes over there, that's when you slam Bellicor. You go, okay, I've rushed. I'm in the open. Bellicor, stop the long strikes. That 3+ is the most nervous roll because if you fail it, you just lose. Because my plan is not to get these guys shot, and I've moved them forward on the basis that I'm going to roll a 3+. And if I don't, that's the end of the game.
Right.
So that's why the win rate's not massive, but you've still got play.
Mm-hmm.
And so you end up playing you play as a ball, they're fast, and you go, okay, I've killed this bit. And you just move through their army, killing bit by bit. So I played. Oh, well, I'll pause there, actually, if you've any more. But then I can talk about some of the games I've played.
It's great. Obviously because the Demon Princes fight at the start of the phase, that's always something that's occurred to me because you can obviously sort of they go and then you still get to pick. But
I want to go on record as saying, Vince, I pointed that out to you that all of them are fighting at the top of the phase, and you're like, push.
Yeah, sure.
It's no big deal.
It's look, when described, especially with following it up with a giant, right? That's or with Bellicor as appropriate. I think that's the key of how much of it's flowing in there. I hadn't thought about the sort of sequencing of it and what was going to happen, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you pick the thing, and because again, if they don't have shooting, you just go, okay, as long as you can't charge me turn 1, and if you can't charge me turn 1, I then control combat forever. That's then going to be fine for the rest of the game. So against melee armies, you're okay, well, even if you've got a big threat piece, I just make sure after I charge, I'm your move +6 inches away. And then you can't get me. And then, so that's kind of how it plays there. So I first played 4 Mega Gargants, so the classic Gatebreaker, Double Kraken, and a War Stomper. And giants go forwards, and one of them's Doombringer, so that one dies quite straightforwardly and easily to your army. You just really rinse through it pretty fast. And then the others, One-Eyed Grunnock's really helpful as a pin piece. He's 35 wounds. He's pretty tough against other giants, and he gets quite a lot of attacks against them. And you basically just jump around. Bellicor with Call to Glory will knock down more or less half a giant every turn. It's a lot of really reliable we're talking 2s and 3s with 4 rerolls, level output. So it's really helpful. And then if you've got a couple of princes alive, that guy goes from full health to nearly dead. And then in the giant turn, those princes kill him because he's still fighting them unless he's run away. So that was fine. I played 2 more Crusher Ironjaws. And so again, you Doombringer Blade 1, and that one dies quite straightforwardly. And then generally, as the other one tries to get into the game, that's when you apply Be'lakor. So then it can't reassert itself into the game. And then you've got like pigs coming in, but they don't do super great into princes that kill maybe a couple of them first. And then you've got like of the 3 pigs, maybe 1 pig is trying to kill a demon prince in cover, and you go, that guy all out defense, he's going to be on a 1-up save, and so I'll fail a couple, but I'll probably be okay. That's fine. Then I played like Virkos or Vrykos, the Gravelords with like loads of dogs,
the wolf one,
and a zombie dragon. Yeah, zombie, some blood knights, and he had the zombie dragon like fully juiced up. I got a bit lucky, but I had I mean, this is one corner thing, but I had like some iron golems into mystical terrain just in cover, being like, yeah, I'm just holding this bit of space. And it's like, okay, my zombie dragon and 5 blood knights will all charge, and I've got like flaming weapon, I have all the business. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna, and like I'm in cover. I like I'm just really really tough. I think he left them with like 4 wounds left in the unit. I thought this whole everything, they're just really difficult to shift, and so people go there. But I mean, generally, if you're playing a diagonal, you can dictate which side you fight on, and then the stuff that's not that side doesn't get to fight you until you decide you want to fight it. And when you do, you fight it with 1,500 points.
Nice.
Then I played 7 dragons and some long strikes, and I lost that one by a point. It's on the Vice, so it's quite a low scoring one anyway. And the double move on the dragons, you just send a pair in that are buffed up, is quite tricky because I can put Doombringer on 1 unit, but I can't do it every single time. And if I go to kill it and it doesn't all die, I'm then a bit out of position, and that's a bit tricky then. So that's a bit awkward. But he played it really well, and it came down to like turn 5. Be'lakor needed to kill a 6-wound dragon with all the rerolls, and he just failed. So it's like a close game. So I'm pretty happy with that. Sure. And then last day I played like 4 dragons, 6 long strikes, and I'm kind of teched to beat that kind of army.
Sure.
Because you Doombringer the dragons, you Be'lakor the long strikes. They send the dragons in, you kill them, you then terrain hop until you get to the long strikes, and then you kill them. So that was kind of fine. So I enjoyed it a lot. Like there's some, I don't know if I'd play the same thing again. Like Grunnock is a weird one because he's really cool to have like a mega gargant you can't shoot. That like really throws people, which I really like. When
sure,
the pitch black is not like despoilers units can't be seen.
Right.
It's like you can't see anything. So the mega gargant being able to hide is like really weird for people to mentally like figure out. And the -1 to hit bubble after he fights is quite nice, but generally a lot of stuff's dead anyway. So that sounds like an embarrassment of riches problem, but it's the case. If you hit them with like 1,500 points, it's all dead. So -1 to hit on like whatever's left is fine, basically.
I love it. I love that it's 30 models, by the way. I'm also a big fan of that. That's good. 30 models is the ideal number of models, basically, for an AOS army, so we're in a good place. All right, very cool, man. Thank you. This is great. I love it. But I also want to talk about this next list. This is the Idolaters list. It's time to talk about snakes. Is Snake. All right. Walk people through the nightmare that is the snakes.
So this is not 30 models. I think it's like 130, something like that. But
before you go, can I just point everybody to this drops number down here in the bottom? 17. But
I had 13 this weekend. That's fine.
This is 17. That's a lot more. But 193 wounds. Woo!
Yeah, and it's all behind a war shrine as well. So you've got like another 20% of the wounds on top, or another 17% of the wounds on top, roughly. Yeah, another 20%. Right. So that's quite. I mean, it's basically
I love your hero loadout. Like just all the heroes. This is my kind of list. This is what my Night Haunt list looked like. It was just 6-foot heroes, a totem, and all the bodies.
Yeah, exactly that. It plays the quote real Warhammer. Like I played and I was like, should we play some real Warhammer? Just run to the middle and fight. And they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, brilliant. So like the Idolator Lord, he's a priest that can pray twice, and he can do the same prayer twice. And because he's Khorne, his prayer is pick a unit and it gets reroll all hits. And Splintered Fang like that prayer a lot. And then the War Shrine has a prayer which is reroll all hits and wounds. and they like that a lot again, and so do the Marauders. So you make like, I'm trying to think of a word that isn't lozenge, but it's just you make a big lozenge-shaped ball of army, and you push that lozenge forwards, and anything that it comes within, because idolaters, every unit of cultists gets the Marauder charge rule.
Right.
So
Yes.
everything is, you're making like 10-inch charges really straightforwardly. So
And then you make them choke on it.
yeah, exactly. So if this massive, I mean, it's probably like 2.5 foot across your army, and it's just nothing but models in that whole space. You've got like 5 Wrathmongers in the middle for +1 attack all round. Then in the middle of that unit, like on the middle guy, you've got the Deathbringer for +1 attack to everyone in range, which is the same range. And then you've got the Blood Secretor next to him. So again, so you've got +3 attacks on the whole army. Even the heroes are at +3 attacks to all their profiles. And you've got a War Shrine doing 7 and 9, 16 attacks. Great, I'll have that. Like that's fine. It's Khorne, so all rerolls 1s to hit and gets +1 to wound natively. But the idea is you have this big death ball and the Splintered Fang with full rerolls. You're looking at 4 attacks each, 6s to hit, do mortal wounds. So on average, a unit of 10 with 22 attacks puts out about 7 mortal wounds, roughly. And then you've got a Chaos Lord in there for fight twice. You've got the important units in Hunters, so you can't stop me fighting twice. You've got the Spheranxes, so that you can't activate between my first and second fight. So overall, so I played like Owen Jackson. I played the Owen Jackson with this, and we're on the same team, and we're staying in the same place in the draw. And on Saturday morning, we were just like, "This is it. This is it." One of us is going home sad on Sunday lunchtime, and he had like Nagash, OBR Nagash, and pushes him in. He's like, "I'm going to just charge these 10 Splintered Fang," and it's like, because they're at the front, you have the layers of the lozenge. And it starts with like the least threatening stuff, and then as you get closer to the middle, it's just more and more like horrendous. And it's like 10 Splintered Fang with like +3 on rerolls. And he's like, "Oh, I'll just fight them." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to fight on death for a CP with everything." So that unit does 8 damage to Nagash, like through all of his buffs. I'm like, okay, so he's like nearly dead, right? And then my go, I'm just like 10 more. Okay, that's Nagash finished off then. Like with just like 150 points of like rubbish.
Right.
And then you've still got like Mortek Guard. And you're okay, well, I suppose this unit of 20 Splintered Fang will do 162 attacks into you. Like that's
6s or mortals. Yeah.
Yeah, with full rerolls. But so
Yeah.
you do like maybe 55 mortal, probably 50 mortal wounds at like pretty consistently. Like that's dead. Like Archaon, 4 aboard. I don't care if you've got 20 wounds, right? You're on average dead. Like you come within range to fight me. So I've got like Untamed Beasts and Golems that you hit first, but the outer range of them will be within 11.5 of the Spheranx.
Right.
Because I've got 2, I can cover the entire lozenge.
Yeah.
And the Doom lozenge, if you like. It's just this massive Doom lozenge blob of army. And if you come within melee range of it, you just die next turn. You just can't avoid it. And if you
I'm sorry, Vince. This is actually what I've been commissioned to paint.
I know. No, absolutely.
This is going to be in your basement in a couple weeks.
I look forward to it. It's so good. I really love it.
It's really good fun. It's really good fun. Like it comes unstuck against shooting. So I played a bunch of stuff. I played Archaon, 20 Splintered Fang, kill him. Played Teclis. He was like, "I'm just going to push him up for Monstrous Takeover," and I was like, "Move 6. It's 11-inch charge for 20 Splintered Fang." They make that. He's dead. Like, and then I played because you just go, "Okay, I've got a 5-up ward and all of this," and you go, "Here's like." He's dead. And then the Chaos Lord's like sprinting into range to make them double fight. And he's like, "Okay, well, he's nearly dead." And Teclis goes, he's killed a few, and he's all right. And I go, "Okay, I'll go with them again." That's the end. Like, good night, sweet prince.
Right.
Like that's the end of Teclis. Yeah. And then I played Seraphon with double Basties, and he just stood back and shot me off. And you just can't do it because you just push the lozenge forward, and the Basties go, "Okay, that's the hero's dead." The Comets as well. You just can't. You can't not have that happen.
Yep.
So it's like you just keep pushing the lozenge forward into opponent after opponent, and then one of them can finally just shoot you off before it hits, and then it all just melts. But it was good fun. I would 10 out of 10 play it again. It's real.
It's amazing. So, like, functionally, what I ran this week was double Warlord Hunters. Like, it was a variant of this. Only instead of all the mortals, it was all the regen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so fantastic.
Yeah, it's when you have just like, it's like not a complex army massively. Like it has, its trick is if you fight it, you die, and it can outfight anything that's there, and it will kill whatever's in front of it. It's not like the Demon Prince is like the other end of the scale. You can work the idolaters out. You look at it and go, oh my god, if that touches me, I'm blended.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like the math on this one's so clear, right? Yes, 100%.
But then when you actually play, you're like, oh, I can't be in much space without being charged next turn. And you have like Arcane Tome, because even with a Blood Secretor, like you're just throwing Mask of Darkness with you buff up the Marauders with 4 rolls to hit and wound, and you go, I need a 7, and I have to reroll my own successful casts. But if I get it, that's a lot of output.
Yeah.
But I got charged on them by 3 Tzeentch Varanguards, and they killed all the Marauders, and 21 of them fighting on death is like 105 attacks with 4 rerolls to hit and wound. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, because the buff lasts, because it's a prayer, it persists, and they're in aura range of everything, and they've all got a point of rend, like all of these, because you kill them all at once. So,
right.
And there's Vanguard just lift. I'm like, I'll take that trade. Like,
yeah,
270 for 280. That's fine.
Done.
Like,
Done.
Yeah, I mean, this trades so well, right? Like, again, if somebody, exactly what you said, if somebody wants to play, quote unquote, platonic, fair, traditional Warhammer, this is the way to go, because this trades so brutally with everything else. And you've still got the 2 Untamed Beasts, who, if you need to, can be the important sort of like chaffy out there, just there to like, sure, sacrifice them, whatever, it's 70 points, it's gone. But then whatever comes on the counterpunch is just killing whatever touched those Untamed Beasts, right?
Exactly. Yeah. If you don't have, because it was at the point in the meta when there was not loads of shooting, so that's how I got like a decent run. It's like only the real kind of double Basti Thunder Lizard Seraphon has to punch to get through them quickly enough that I don't hit you with a critical mass. But yeah, exactly as you say, you come in and you think, oh well, I'll fight some Untamed Beasts, I'll take back control of the middle objectives. Okay, that's fine. They're yours this turn. But now the lozenge goes in.
Right. Right. Beautiful. I love it. It's so good. I can't wait to see this on the table in my basement. All right. So this last list is from Phil Marshall. This is you titled this one "Never Die Chosen." This is in host of the Ever Chosen 6 Circle. Take us through this one.
Yeah, so this is Phil's also been doing really well with Slaves of Darkness in the UK, and he loves Archaon and the host of the Ever Chosen. So this is the host where Varangard become battle line, where Archaon can look into the future, or as Phil calls it, 4 up in the cup. Like, because his command abilities, you spend a CP and you roll a dice and you keep it hidden, and on a 1 to 3, your opponent gets the next priority, and on a 4 to 6, you get the next priority. So he just rolls the dice in the cup and keeps it hidden, and then, good times ensue. The Varangard on the charge get +1 damage on all the weapons. So he's got the 6 attacks. So normally 3s and 3s, -1/1. With Archaon on the board, they're 2s and 3s. And then with Host of the Ever Chosen, it's reroll 1s to hit and wound on a thing that you just point at. And you go, that thing is really dead this turn. So the whole army is more or less 2s and 2s, rerolling everything. And then the save is 3 up, rerolling 1s. And then obviously loads of +1 options from the Sorcerer Lord and the War Shrine if you want. And then they've got double Spell Ignore for being Tzeentch, which is a bit crazy that you can roll 2 Spell Ignores against the spell. But you can, so you should. And then obviously Archaon himself, who just goes in and deletes like whatever it is that's there, because the Chaos Lord makes him fight twice. Right. So you get loads of really good quality, really reliable activations. It's a very tough army to unpick. He plays it very compact, and there are so many games where you'll just roll that 4 up in the cup. You'll see it and you think, okay, this turn I've kind of hit, charged, killed a bunch of your screens. Then I'm not in combat anymore, and then I'm going to have another go straight away. I'm going to double activate both units of Varangard and Archaon, which is just 6 really high quality activations into the meat of your army where you've no screens, and he knows that play comes off when he goes for it.
Yeah, he's not betting on the double, he's knowing on the double. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And imagine because he's not got like loads of models and loads of stuff, but when you just know it's going to work, you're just all in with it. All in, It's not a lozenge, and I played him with this, and the lozenge won because Phil also wants to play. I like Platonic Warhammer as a term. I'm going to use that definitely. Also likes to play Platonic Warhammer with this, and unfortunately, it can't take the Fang mortal, like nothing can. But he does really well with this really consistently. Like it's just very, very difficult to unpick and unpack. It's all, his broken ranks targets are like hideous Varangard with 3 up reroll ones, or more of that, or 20 wounds of golems with this, and you're like, I don't want to choose a battle tactic. Can I just run 3 every turn, please?
Right.
Is that okay? This game, like, this, it's really hard to like pick apart and understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what are you going to slay the warlord? Good luck. Are you picking broken ranks? Good luck, right? There's just like, yeah. Awesome. This is a great list. This is pretty classic. It looks awesome. I love seeing Archeon still on the list. I mean, the great part about Slaves to Darkness is it is now the home where Archeon is still good, functional, great, perhaps. Which is nice. You used to only see him showing up in other gods lists. I'm glad he's back home where he belongs. Over here, and I think he's absolutely got play in a list like this. And again, totally, what I really love about this, and what you kind of walk through here, and the drops are a poor measure of this, but it's really interesting. This is a 1-drop, and it's utilizing its 1-drop in a good way through the 4-up in the cup, right? Whereas the previous list with the sort of death lozenge, somebody had recommended suppository, by the way, because what's going to happen there, but. With that, drops are irrelevant. It's a completely different path to victory, and you're just immune to caring about that sort of stuff for the most part. Yeah,
100%. I think I prefer snakes to the face. That's all I'm going to say on that comment. I think that's a better mental image. On another cool thing that Phil's done in this list actually is to make broken ranks super, because with the White Dwarf update, you can make cultists battle line if you give them the same mark as your general.
Right.
So he's deliberately made the Untamed Beasts not Tzeentch.
Right. Yes.
So that way
they can't give up points.
Line, so they can't give up broken ranks. Although you lose on like that one mission, well, not lose, but you have a slightly harder time on that one mission where battle line trumps scoring.
Power.
Overall, you can push them up to the middle, play the middle objectives for a couple of points easily to start with, and not worry about trading that for an immediate broken ranks. So it's a really nice little trick. If in the idolaters, I would do it, except all cultists have to have the same mark as your general in idolaters. You just can't get around it. But as a general tip, I think that's really, really smart, and I definitely recommend doing that. I think of the 3, if you were like, I want to play one of these 3 and get it on the table and kind of get it ready, that Phil's is definitely the one I would pick, because the idolaters is like a lot of models, 129 models, a lot. And it's quite like effort intensive to play. You're moving a lot of stuff. There's a lot of kind of measure.
12-inch bubbles. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Loads of stuff to measure out. And then the Demon Princess is like a weird one to wrap your head around. It's rewarding, but it does take quite a bit of okay, here's how all my army is going to start to work and pull together. The Everchosen list is really effective at what it does. It's still got nice tricks and plays and things it can do, but by and large, you get a lot of certainty from the abilities and rules that are built in. You're rerolling everything, hitting on 2s, saving on 2s. Good profiles.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, let's bring us to a close then here with a little bit of talk about the future. So, the future of S2D. Now, we know we've gotten our Tome Celestial as the aforementioned cultist update. So we know we're not getting a book anytime soon, which is good. We're catching them at the right moment here, okay? So we can affect change. We can be the chaos change we want to see in the world. All right? So what would we want to see with the army? Simon, what would be if you had to pick one thing you're going to change about Slaves to Darkness in its next incarnation, what changes that? What's your one thing?
I think it would be if warriors and knights as 3+ save could be one change, it would be that. But if not, just one warriors 3+ save. You need an excuse to take an iconic unit, and then ideally, I mean, I'm stretching the question, but a point of rend on the melee that isn't the halberds, just so that they get just so they fight like liberators. Not a massive ask, right? I want them to be a reasonably parity with liberators. I'm fine if you only take 10s and they're bigger blobs. That's fine, but some level, that's my change. combat parity with Liberators for Chaos Warriors.
I like that very much. No, I'll give you the Knights and the Warriors for one change. Absolutely. Like, have the heavily armored Chaos units actually be heavily armored. And the rend point is so well. One of the problems with
Move
Chaos
them
Warriors,
back to the center of the army.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the problems with Chaos Warriors is because they fall into that bad space, which traditionally has just had a bad home in the game, which is the sort of elite infantry that you're almost always overpaying on. Right, like in this is true across all of Warhammer. It's a problem because oftentimes you want things that are just you want to sort of push into the role as hard as you can. So oftentimes, like, really cheap things win because they're just better and more efficient at getting more bodies on the table, which ends up being better than soaking a little more damage. Or you want things that hit super hard and punch way above their weight on that kind of thing. The elite infantry, the big elite infantry, have had a rough ride. That sort of 2 wound infantry. There has been exceptions. You know, Hearthguard at various point might be one of those exceptions. But that was because they could both take such an incredible punch and deal so much damage. They actually fought themselves out of the pit of despair. You know, the only other example I can think of is probably Phoenix Guard, right? Just because, again, they're so good at what they do with just a 4-up ward against everything.
And 2-inch reach. Like
and
2-inch reach on 25 mil bases. Like,
they can
everybody's
actually
getting it.
sort of have the attrition fight, and generally being always immune to battle shock and getting a bunch of rerolls and all their stuff. It made them defensive enough and offensive enough to fight their way out. That's the world we need to live in, right? Where Chaos Warriors are your anvil attrition unit. They can grind their way out of a situation.
Yeah, but if you have that kind of thing available that puts 8 damage back, you know, if that unit's like reasonably tough already, you don't need necessarily all that defense. So you can Chaos Lord them and fight twice with them, and it's like, okay, I've actually got an interesting center that's pretty like complicated to unpick. And then I can play things that are around that and swing around this and engage with the opponent's army. But yeah, it would open up a lot more interesting ways, like even more interesting ways to play Slaves to Darkness, I think.
Yep. We're effectively, with your answer, by the way, we answered my second question, which is, can Chaos Warriors and Chaos Knights ever be the correct choice in 3.0? And I think the answer there is yes. Like, it needs a scroll change, but the answer could be yes with a scroll change.
I think the only time I've seen Knights do anything close to return on investment that you'd take them is if you put 5 in the Idolators. So there's a build where you take a little bit out and you just have a unit of 5 Knights with Lances. Because with the +3 attacks and rerolling everything, they really, really do a lot of work. You're looking at 26 attacks on the Lancers.
Yep.
On and then fighting twice.
Yep.
And then if there's a Sphinx in the way, you can get 104 damage of attacks with 4 rerolls to hit and wound. Like at Ren 2. Like, that is enough. That's good rate that I would pay for, definitely. Like, I didn't have them, so I didn't put them in the list, but so unless you've got a really niche and you really overclock them with crazy buffs, I just don't think they can work. And even Chaos Warriors with +3 attacks just don't do the work without that point of rent.
Yep. Tom?
Yeah, man, it's tough because I think that my big lament is that Chaos Warriors and Knights aren't at the center of the army, right? I mean, if that's fixed, right?
Yeah, let's assume that's done.
Yeah, if that's done, then my call is this: find a role for all of the cultists.
Sure.
Fix the rest of the models that we want to run, right?
Like, one of them becomes maybe like a pure ambushing unit where they can set up late in the game.
Yeah.
You know, like they can come in turns 1, 2, or 3 from anywhere.
Cypher Lords look like ninjas. Let them be ninjas.
Yeah, it's something like you could imagine them each having some special ability that could give them a role in a particular build. Not the default choice, but in a build having a role.
But the fire guys, they mortal on 6s. Okay. Like, guess what? Splinter Fang do too, and they do it better. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think Raptorix. Fix Raptorix. That's my
sure.
They're just awful. It's just awful.
Chickens.
Awful units. Yeah.
The wind chickens, yeah. So mine is going to be a big one thing. Okay? But here's what I want. I want a lot less synergy in the army, which is a strange thing to say. I know.
Hang up. I don't want to leave this.
Yeah, exactly. No. But wait, just stick with me. Stick with me. Ready? Here's the trade-off. The trade-off is you have just some of the best units, period. Like, my one change would be keep the auras, keep those. That's a cool mechanic. It's a cool idea. It makes sense, the power of chaos and all of that. But, like, this is such a synergistic army, it almost becomes hard to even write points and balance for, when what it should be is just really good on the scroll. Like, these things should just be
a bunch of independent actors.
A bunch of independent actors. Because they are just supposed to be really horrendously frightening on their own. I'm not saying get rid of all synergy. I'm saying wheel it back. Like, obviously a shrine is still a buff piece. Cool, that's what it's there for. Right? That's what it's there to do. But make the base scroll good on its own so you can feel like when you're spending the points, you're not getting, frankly, what is in current AOS, a subpar unit. Until it gets 5 layers of buffs on it. Right? And then becomes good. I want them to be like baseline good with the appropriate buffs if you take the appropriate buff pieces. Right? That are there to be that thing. This is my anvil. It's a good anvil. If I want to invest the points in the buffs, I can make it a great anvil. But it's a good anvil on its own. It'll grind hard. Right? And so on and so forth. They're like repeat ad nauseum for the rest of the army. I think the army is over reliant on synergies right now with subpar war scrolls, and that doesn't feel like chaos to me. Right? Like, that's not what this army is. So that's my only point. I don't want them to be like Gloomspite. No. No. I want individual dedicated good buff pieces that work across the army. Not keyword bingo nonsense.
I think that's a bit like, and with the synergies, it sounds a bit like kind of swapping how cities play with how Slaves to Darkness play.
Yeah.
Because I see cities as like that collection of good stuff. I want some tough battle line. Okay, I've got Iron Breakers. I want like some fast shooty stuff. Okay, I've got like, crossbowmen, or I've got like all the pistoliers and outriders and stuff. They've got like decent war scrolls, and then you buff the thing with the thing that buffs the thing.
Right, the thing has a power pair that goes with it, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe there's like, I can see the design space I think you're kind of pointing at, and I don't hate the idea as much as I did just now. So,
okay, good. I brought you back around. Good. Like, because it's an army of people where everyone is effectively trying to serve the Chaos Gods, and these are all like everything even above like a base Marauder has received some boon of the Chaos God's favor, right? Like, you don't get to be even a regular old Chaos Warrior without being something that's pretty frightening, right? So, like, I just want to see that captured on the base scroll. And I think that would open up a lot of play, too, for it, if you had the ability to have both, like, here's my strong center, here's my independent actors. That opens up a lot of different interesting angles to take with the army. So, where you don't have to just play in a lozenge to super buff everything, right? Okay. So I'll just jump to my third question since we already answered the second one. Is this art, like, we all assume in the new GHB we're going to go away from the monster meta, okay? Like, I'm just assuming this is the case.
I don't think we are, but continue.
It's fine. Let's just say we are for the moment, okay? Let's just take that as a thing. Like, we're going to maybe monster meta goes away in some way because of, like, various things that happen. We're going to get new battle tactics, I would assume, and they might not have bonus points for monsters, right? So, like, we could shift away from it in some way. It could have bonus points for, I don't know, reinforced units or something like that. Like, that, if you wanted to push a horde meta, like, I don't know. I have no idea. But assumingly, we're going to change. Is this army ready for a non-monster meta? Simon, what do you think?
I think so. I don't think it relies. So if you don't have monsters, like if you have monsters at the moment, you gain some points and you lose a couple, and you stop seeing. I think what maybe you will benefit from in Slaves to Darkness is that more people will want to play. Like, will have to take blobs of stuff that want to come and fight in the middle of the board, rather than my monster zooms in, blows up some stuff, and then goes away and is fine. or something like that. I mean, the risk though of a non-monster meta is that it's easier for shooting to prosper when there's not these big, angry, buffed up things barreling down the sights.
Yeah.
So I think, and if that happens, Slate of Darkness may struggle. Like if the meta gets a lot shootier and a lot more people are easily able to just shoot them off, it is going to be very difficult for them. So I think it's really difficult to say actually, because there's just so my sense is that they're ready for more or less any meta you'd play in as a book. You just see the meta and then you pick the stuff from the book that is good into that meta. So I'm sure if there was a non-monster meta, you'd be able to put together like a proper functioning high quality list from Safe to Darkness. But you'd also be able to put together a whole bunch that just die.
Yeah. Tom, you agree with that? With that statement?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that passes the smell test to me. It's one of those armies that has a big enough bench, even though it is lacking some capabilities. Like, look, it's not Seraphon, it's not Stormcast. We all know that. Okay, like those are huge, massive scrolls that like can choose to lean into any phase, can respond much more agilely to almost any meta. But I think it's got a big enough bench and a big enough suite of capabilities, and of like pulling between strong heroes, interesting units, versatile units, that it's going to be responsive to the meta and probably perform well, kind of no matter, with the right list. That's you said it exactly right. With the right list, right? It's not like the list you're running now is exactly the right list to go into whatever that's going to be, 3.3 or something, the post GHB meta of the summertime, right? But there's probably a list in there that is the correct choice. Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Simon, anything else you want to leave us with before we call it a day here?
No, just another big shout out to Owen Jackson, the man himself, and big thanks for him for designing the logos for the Welsh Age of Sigmar team. So
there you go.
Thank you very much.
Always.
And thank you very much
show.
for having me on the show.
Hey, it was an absolute pleasure, Simon. We will have you back anytime. I was blown away by your list, and it delivered 100%. Thank you so much for coming on, brother, and staying up late. I know it is quite late where you are. So thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you.
All right. For all of you out there, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe. Don't forget we've got a Patreon. It's in the links down below if you want to support the channel. So, go ahead and do any of those things. Hitting the like, hitting the subscribe, hey, that's free. And we do appreciate it very much. It helps other people find the show. So that's great stuff. Simon, thank you again. Tom, thank you as always. Everybody out there, as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.